Hey guys, what's up? It's Tim. Just thought I'd put together a little recording because I know some of you guys, I think two of you guys weren't able to make it to the last class, and I didn't want you to fall behind. Also, there were a couple of things that we went through a little bit quickly towards the end of the class there, so I thought this would be a good opportunity just to show you guys what we worked on, and for those of you that were there, just kind of go over it again because you can never repeat this stuff too much. So if you go ahead and jump into Basecamp, go to the Seneca 2010 project, then you're going to find that my notes are up there. If you look at class 3 notes, there's also a file, class3.zip. And if you grab that, then you're going to actually get the FLA, the Flash Develop project, and the code that we've been working on, which is document class. So, and then if you click, just on the message of class 3 notes, you'll get a little overview of what we actually did during the class. So basically where we are at this point is that we have a working document class going, and kind of the purpose of this session was to take what we had done in the previous class and refactor it a little bit. So I quickly put together the code that we had in the previous class again, and it looks a little something like this. So if you might recall, just for a quick review of what a constructor is inside of a class file and what the document class file is, basically when you create a Flash project and you want to create an application or anything of any sophistication, there's a way inside of Flash that you're going to be able to link a piece of code to your Flash file. And when you do that, all of your visual assets are going to be kept inside of the FLA file. So that's going to be things like your your timeline tweens, your bitmaps, your sound files, your fonts, and so forth, and all of that's going to get compiled into the binary file, which is the SWIF. But there's a lot of advantages to actually keeping your code outside of the FLA file, and that's where the document class comes in. Now, this will be strictly review for you guys, but it's good to talk about it again. Alright, so now we're looking inside of the FLA, and inside of the FLA, in the properties panel here, you're going to see a little field here called class. Now in the past, you'll notice that we just had main project inside of there, and we talked about the fact that when you go to compile your Flash file, what's going to happen is it's going to look inside of that document class field and get the name of the document class from it. Then it's going to look inside of our folder structure, and it's going to look for main project.as. You don't have to call it main project. You can call it anything that you want, but the name has to match both inside of the field right here and the AS file that you're creating. And so that's kind of what we have here. We have main project.as. Notice the name of the file there. Now once it finds that, it's going to go inside of that and look for a class name that is the same. And we have that right there. And then the last thing it's going to do is it's going to look for what is called the constructor method. Now this is a method that has the exact same name as the class. If you look, I'm highlighting it right here. You can see main project. Alright, so just to review it again, just looking back inside of Flash, when we go to compile, it's going to look for main project. Now one thing to note, you're not going to put the .as file into the document class here. You're just going to put main project. By convention, Flash is going to know to look for main project.as, so you don't need to put that in there. So when we hit compile, it's going to look for main project.as. It's going to find it right here. You see that's the name of my ActionScript file. It's going to go inside and look for a class called main project, and then it's going to look for public function main project, and we call that the constructor function. Now the constructor function is a very, very important function inside of any class file, and the reason for that is that these instructions that we put inside of the constructor will get executed anytime that this class is instantiated. It happens by default. This is all the stuff that should happen by default anytime that we're creating an instance of this class. We'll talk a little bit more about what that means, creating an instance, but suffice it to say that whatever you put inside the constructor of your document class here, as I'm highlighting, is most definitely going to happen. There is no way that you can prevent it from happening. So that could cause a lot of problems for us, right? Because there's many cases where maybe you don't want the stuff that is inside of the constructor to happen. Maybe, for instance, a user did something unexpected or chose an option. When we have a lot of code inside the constructor there, it can become a bit of a problem. It creates what we call brittle code, inflexible code. And if you look at the way that our project used to be set up here, we can see that we've got one loop, and everything is pretty much happening inside of the constructor here. And so when this runs, there's going to be no way that we can stop all of this from happening. So in the last class, what we did was we looked at some ways that we can make this code a little bit more flexible by refactoring it. One of the things that we did was we looked at what is actually happening inside this application. If you think about it, it is actually doing three things. The first thing it's doing is it's creating a bunch of boxes. That's one responsibility. Another responsibility is it's setting a bunch of properties on all of those boxes. And then the third thing that it's trying to do is actually display stuff on the screen. If you're familiar at all with game programming, then you realize that this is a very, very common cycle of things that happen. In a game, you would never have that happening all inside of one function. You would always break that up into those three separate pieces. So that is what we have done with our document class if you download class3.zip from Basecamp. But we can take a quick look at it anyway. So the first thing that we did was we created 3 methods. Now, methods, as we were saying, are almost like little mini programs inside of your program, but I like to think of them actually as like little clubs, little parties going on. And the stuff that happens inside of that club stays inside the club, and not anybody can get in there. For instance, our first method here is called the build method. Well, inside of there, we're actually creating all of our boxes here, and we've talked about how to do that. Basically, every time new box is called here, another box is created from our library. Now, if you're wondering how Flash knows to find that box inside of the library, if you just jump back into the project and you click on the library, you can see there's our box. And if you give that a right click and you go to the properties here, you're going to see inside of there class name box. And the really, really important thing is that this little checkbox here, export for ActionScript, has been ticked off. When we do that, Flash creates what we call a linkage identifier, which is basically the name of the class here. And you can see that our box class is an extension of Flash Display Movie Clip, which means that anything Movie Clips could do, our box is going to be able to do as well. So that's how Flash is going to know to find the box inside of the library and make a new instance of it back inside the code here. Alrighty. So that's fairly straightforward. We're using what we call a loop